I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. With disgraced FBI Director Jim Comey set to testify on the Hill tomorrow, there are specific questions that need to be asked and answered. Namely, why did Hillary aides Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin likely get away with lying to the FBI while Trump associates are prosecuted? Byron York has some answers. And while the resistance cheers, the Mueller probe may have inadvertently ensnared former Clinton and Obama aides. Professor Jonathan Turley will tell us why this is another sign that Mueller has overstepped his bounds. Plus, we're led to believe that everything the government tells us about climate science is true. But what if those reports are being funded by billionaire activists? The man who investigated the latest climate report is here to tell us what's going on. Herman Cain and Raymond Arroyo are here as well. But first, the attack of the liberal killjoys. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Liberals are now trying to tell us how to feel, how to celebrate, and if you can believe it, even how to pray during the holidays. A few decades back, well, they fought really hard against the campaign by Tipper Gore. Remember when she was lobbying for warning labels on music that had explicit content in the lyrics? And let's face it, whenever parents, for instance, raise concerns about music industry's gross, explicit lyrics or over-sexualized scenes on TV, well, liberals responded with, oh, just change the channel. But today, they have a current case of amnesia because they're now the new censors. And the offending content? Christmas songs.
The character in the song is saying no, and they're saying, well, does no really mean yes? And I think in 2018, what we know is consent is yes.
Did you see in that video how she tries to leave and he grabs her arm and then she looks at her arm and then he closes the thing and says you can't leave? I mean, that part is somewhat coercive. I mean, I have to say it's making me rethink.
This song?
Yeah, it is making me rethink it.
I'm rethinking a lot of things, too, after watching Nora's comment there. All right, baby, it's really cold outside. Well, notice how the left, they don't want to place any limits on what is truly objectionable content. You know, hip-hop, rap, some of the worst stuff, which routinely objectifies women, demonizes law enforcement, and celebrates things called murder. But instead, they seek to put the darkest spin on part of our American musical tradition. The left has no problem with performances like these. But Baby, It's Cold Outside is a national disgrace. Thankfully, not everyone is thrilled, though, about where the politically correct crowd is taking us.
Not me.
I'm going to go back and... Okay.
No, so I mean, so we just have to agree to disagree. I just think that it's a light, flirtatious song, and she clearly doesn't seem to be so upset. Keep looking at the whole darn song before you make a decision. So irritated by this.
So I might guess.
People, sit down. We are losing our sense of humor nowadays.
Bingo, Gayle King. Now, even Christmas specials, we used to look forward to them every year. They only played once a year, and it made them even more special. Even those specials aren't safe from the liberal blacklist. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer has been singled out by the Huffington Post as seriously problematic. Have they watched TV recently? People are being sexually assaulted and brutalized 24/7, HuffPo. But a 54-year-old claymation reindeer sends them all to the crying room? Well, actually, scenes like this are quite harrowing.
From now on, gang, we won't let Rudolph join in any reindeer games, right?
I love the little whistle around his neck. Well, sorry, but I think I have to take a moment here. I think just seeing that scene may have triggered my PRSD, post-Rudolph stress disorder.
All right, son, try it on.
I don't wanna. Daddy, I don't like it.
You'll like it and wear it. Now, there's one thing I want to make very plain. No doe of mine is going to be seen with a red-nosed reindeer.
Summon the grief counselors. Oh, and by the way, they say it's sexist because Rudolph's dad, of course, you see, tells his wife that the search for their son is man's work. So she can't go out in the cold. He'll go find Rudolph. You stay here on the home front, honey. No, this is a beloved Christmas special and the longest continuously running one as well. But do you see what liberals seek to do? They're trying to disrupt and destroy traditions and replace them with their own version of some transitory nonsense. By seeing dark forces and even an innocent Christmas special, they divide us with the goal of ripping away yet another little innocuous thing that families have enjoyed for more than a half a century. But nothing fun and traditional is off limit, I'd say for any of these censorious liberals. Years ago, they started complaining that Charlie Brown, that Christmas special, was offensive too, because it was too Christian.
The angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
I still cry when I see that. Never could be made today. By the way, any day I'm expecting that PETA is going to lodge a complaint about Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. After all, that green guy with the attitude didn't treat Max the dog very well. Now, the left are the worst types of moralists because they claim not to be. They talk about tolerance and diversity and being your authentic self. I'm going to speak my truth. But what they really want is for you to bow down and worship at their altar of self-righteous political correctness. They want to control what you watch, what you eat, what you hear, and yes, how you speak. And even, as we saw during the Bush 41 funeral yesterday, how you pray.
I just point out that at this moment, the Apostles' Creed being recited, President Trump and the First Lady not reading. Was that, everyone had the thing in their head, but they're not. What was that about, Sally?
Well, it's odd because, he is this supposed religious person who has a spiritual advisor, Paula White, and he had them speak at, pray at his inauguration, and he has all these evangelicals around. So I thought that was bizarre that he didn't even try to read it.
First of all, Trump is considered a very religious person. I don't know what she's reading. But Sally Quinn, who is a journalist, who in her memoir described hexing 3 people, 2 of whom died. And she's going to demand that Trump recite a religious creed at a public ceremony or judge him? Let there no judgment. But again, this is the problem with the left. Depending on the politics of the moment, they go from being libertines to Puritans. The once aggressive seculars suddenly become religious enforcers. And these are the same people who, by the way, applauded when prayer was driven out of the public schools and who cheered when manger scenes were pulled from the public square. Forever crowing about how we need separation of church and state, a phrase found nowhere in any of our founding documents. My friend, today's left is blissfully unaware of how much they've become caricatures of what they accuse conservatives of being. They claim to be tolerant. They're among the most rigid, intolerant people on the planet. They claim to be pro-choice. That only applies to abortion, maybe your gender. They claim to be for creative expression, but they're control freaks and monoliths. They really what they want to do is stifle and marginalize conservative voices, whether they're on college campuses, in the workplace, in the U.S. military, or yes, right here on cable TV. And while they point the finger at Trump for being divisive, they're the ones working overtime to divide the country along lines of race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation, just to name a few. But above all, liberals have become aggressively boring and no fun at all. And that's the angle. Joining me now for reaction is attorney and RNC committee woman from California, Harmeet Dillon, Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo, and CRO of D's Political, Jennifer Holdsworth. First of all, I want everyone to know that this is a safe space here. You can, we won't censor you like some of the liberals. Raymond, I want to start with you. There is a sense of fun and whimsy that seems to be missing in this whole political correctness moment that we've been living in for some time.
Well, jokes are out the door. You can't kid. And look, how do we get over difficult situations? How do we overcome and find connections with people we disagree with? We joke. We make fun of each other and ourselves. That is being pushed further and further out of society. You see it in some of the clips you played. You can't do a little racy or suggestive songs. This was a way in the 1950s that people interacted. It was a way to suggest something without gratuitously hitting you over the head with it. Now we're in a gratuitous age where you can't make the quiet side swipes, the fun jokes on the side. Everything's got to be very plain, very black and white, and frankly, it's a lot uglier out there today.
It's more divisive and not fun. Jennifer, this is what Jerry Seinfeld said a few years ago. He was on with Seth Meyers talking about what it's like to be on the comedy circuit. He's also said he will not perform on college campuses because talk about an unfun place these days. Let's watch.
I can imagine a time when people say, well, that's offensive to suggest that a gay person moves their hands in a flourishing motion and you now need to apologize. I mean, there's a creepy PC thing out there that really bothers me.
Jennifer.
I don't think it's so much about political correctness as it is to just being sensitive of what might really hurt someone. And, you know, look, when we talk about, you know, Christmas songs, I wouldn't necessarily put Baby It's Cold Outside in the realm of Christmas songs. You know, when you talk about liberals...
Oh, even if it's not.
Criticizing, you know, the
way...
Is
it played in June?
The way President Trump, you know, prays, you know, this is a president who was sitting less than a foot away from another president who, you know, a lot of conservatives talked about being a Muslim for the last decades as if there was something wrong with that. So I think when we talk about turning the tide of the national conversation into something that's a little less offensive, it doesn't have to do with political correctness. I would like to see what conservatives would have said had it been President Obama who did not recite the Apostles' Creed when the entire rest of the church did.
I think one of the things that's different here is that conservatives actually try to say we want to conserve the culture. We want to conserve that. What makes us different is okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to have different points of view. But what I'm trying to get to, Jennifer, and you didn't quite seem to understand what I'm saying, is that in this world of if you're offended, I can't say it. I can't even feel it for fear of losing my job, not getting a promotion, not getting a benefit in the workplace. People are afraid to speak their minds. That is not liberal. That's scary. And that's censorious. That's what the left always considered conservatives. Harmeet Dillon.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. I mean, you know, conservatives are not in the business of critiquing how people pray. I just think that's crass. And, you know, he prayed the way and he felt comfortable doing, and it's not our business to critique that. But what I see on college campuses and in workplaces where I do a lot of litigation is that people are constantly censoring themselves, walking around on eggshells. You know, young people are actually doing consent videos before they move to second base with a girl so that they don't get sued. And it's really sucking all the joy out of life. And romance. And romance. And if I were a young person these days, I mean, I would be like stressed out and having to take all the drugs they take now because they're always worried about what the new rules are.
I mean, are you saying that consent is sucking the joy out of romance? Because
no,
that's
what I said was making a video to document the consent is sucking the joy out of interactions between the sexes.
The fear of being dragged before a board or the fear of litigation keeps boys from asking girls out, and vice versa in some cases, because they don't know where the lines are.
Oh, and the presumption of guilt. Don't forget about Title IX, which puts all the boys who looked at a girl in the box for years after hired lawyers.
There's definitely a conversation to be had about due process and what we need to do on college campuses, but I think a consent is a completely different conversation.
Raymond, you actually interviewed candidate Trump about his faith and about
prayer in particular. About
prayer, but again, liberals criticizing how someone decides to pray in the moment. That's wild to me.
You heard,
but I want to play what he said to you about his own prayer.
When you pray, what do you pray for?
I don't want to talk to you about that. I mean, I pray. It's very personal to me. I'm a person of belief, but I certainly, you know, I pray for my family. I pray for our country, but I don't want to talk to you about that. I think that's very personal.
Okay, between you and God.
It is between me and God, yes.
I like the fact they didn't want to talk about it. Liberals are like, don't wear your religion on your sleeve. I get trashed for wearing this cross, by the way, over my cold.
I never get trashed for wearing my cross, ever.
I do. Go to my Twitter feed.
Okay, but
you're a liberal. You can do whatever you want.
With apologies to the jewelry choices, ladies. The moment criticizing the man for not praying the creed, though, or reciting it. First of all, you're dealing with a man who I think is new to faith. He's working his way through it, and he's not ostentatious about it. But I would prefer someone. I would rather a faithful pagan who protects religious freedom and advances basic morality in our government over a pious fraud who assaults both.
Oh,
and
let me read there's a very, very big difference.
But that's the difference that many faith-filled people had with President Obama. It was the policy, not the man.
But there's a very big difference between criticizing the way somebody prays and pointing out hypocrisy in conservatives in terms of religion.
Why is quiet prayer?
Because liberals have been called godless for years when they have worshipped a variety of gods. And I think
that's a non sequitur. You're not arguing the point. The point is liberals claim that they're pro-choice, be who you want to be your authentic self, my truth. Trump is praying in the way he darn wants, and he gets trashed by Don Lemon. Don Lemon used to be someone I actually respected. Don Lemon has gone so far over the line. God bless him. I don't know what's going on with him, but you're so obsessed with trashing Trump that you got to trash him, at the moment when everyone's honoring George Bush. I don't understand that. I think it speaks so poorly of where this culture is. And I think it goes back to, Jennifer, people are truly just afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid to speak, afraid to feel. Now, if you hum along to Baby It's Cold Outside, you might as well have raped somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's gone way overboard, and it's just not fun. There's no fun. Can you really have fun? I guess you can smoke pot, do edibles, and then talk about how you might want to change your gender, and that's kind of interesting, I guess. But you can't do much else. I guess play sports. I mean, honestly, in the public life, it's very hard. Jerry Seinfeld is right. Humor is dead, and that's why they're going to political humor and they trash Trump.
Well, we're moving to a secular dogma, which no one really knows. It's Pope Benedict coined the phrase dictatorship of relativism. Yeah. I think we're here.
All right,
it becomes its own dictatorship.
All right, thank you so much. And our next guest, by the way, joins us to expand on what we brought you in last night's angle. Well, the Democrats claim to be, they're the smart party. They're the science party, the intellectuals, all you troglodytes who voted for Trump, clinging for your guns and religion and all that. The deplorables. You just need to sit down, shut up, and let the smart people run the country because things are very complicated. Well, last night we pointed that out to you, and sadly, the left and many of the GOP establishment smart set have been wrong on issue after issue for years. And today, well, they were just wrong on geography.
We can move forward with this. We have a responsibility, all of us, to secure our borders, north, south, and coming in by plane on our coast. 3 coasts, north, south, and west. And that's a responsibility we honor, but we do so by honoring our values as well.
Was she in REM cycle? Like, what was that? Here now, former GOP presidential candidate Herman Cain. Look, Herman, we all misspeak. I mean, okay, I've misspoken. It's not a big, I don't want to, it's fun. We're trying to have some fun, poke fun at ourselves, and there could be 3 coasts. Herman, what coast are you on right now?
I am on the east part of the nation. Allow me, Laura, for one moment. I want to respond to Jennifer, your previous guest, before we get into our topic. Okay? The Constitution says freedom of religion, which means also freedom to read and freedom to not read if you don't want to.
It also means freedom from religion, sir.
Where's that?
Allow me to speak, please. You had your chance to say what you wanted to say. I have been in a different religious setting than my normal setting, and I didn't pretend to do everything that they did because I wasn't comfortable doing it. So I remained silent, and I didn't read. Now the liberals want to make a big deal out of the fact that the man didn't read. Freedom of religion means, excuse me for getting a little passionate about this, also means freedom to not read if you don't want to. Now, Laura, the compilation that you put together last night was so impressive to me and my folk that I wanted to reproduce that clip on my website, hermancain.com. It demonstrates without a question of a doubt how hypocritical that the Democrats are. And it demonstrates clearly, better than anything that I ever seen, that they do believe that they are smarter than everybody else. This is why they are trying to destroy and change our culture from top to bottom. That's what they're trying to do. And you made that point very clearly by showing what they have said historically and what
a lot of the Republicans,
Hirono
a lot of the Republicans have got, yeah, a lot of the Republicans have screwed up along the way as well. I mean, opening
and that's exactly
China into the WTO, not worrying about the housing bubble, the housing crash.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot Iraq was all going to work out in a couple of years. I mean, none of that worked. Don Lemon said he wouldn't shake hands with Trump at the funeral. Is that a sign of openness or tolerance or? I mean, again, Don Lemon is, you know, kind of a liberal guy, but he didn't want to shake hands. He wouldn't. If he were there, he wouldn't.
Laura, that is not a sign of tolerance. That is a sign of disdain and trying to enforce the liberal doctrine of you conform the way we want you to conform, or we are going to try intimidate and ostracize you. That's what Don Lemon is talking about.
All right, I got to get to my Apostles' Creed here. I got to get to my Apostles' Creed, and I got to go to confession after this segment. All right,
they were at a funeral.
All right, thanks so much, Herman. And ahead, while the resistance cheers the Mueller probe, may have inadvertently ensnared former Clinton and Obama aides. Professor Jonathan Turley in Byron, New York, next.
I still can't believe you got me into.
Do you see how someone could view the context of what she did? Set up a private system. She alone controlled it. She kept everything on it. We now know from Ms. Abedin's deposition that they did it for that very reason. And when they got caught, they deleted what they had, and they scrubbed their devices. Is that part of the context in evaluating this decision?
Sure. And understand what inferences can be drawn from that collection of facts, of course.
What inferences could be drawn? Bleach bidding. Former FBI Director Jim Comey will be back on the Hill tomorrow. And there are some double standards at play, namely when it was revealed in emails that Clinton aides Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills had likely lied to the FBI about their knowledge of her private server. Why the heck weren't they punished? This question has new resonance in the wake of General Flynn's life being turned upside down on account of similar transgressions, lying, 1001 violation. So might Comey face questions about that double standard? Here with us is Byron York, Washington Examiner correspondent, Fox News contributor. Byron, you just wrote a great piece about a set of questions that Comey should grapple with, be asked, and have to answer, number one of which is?
Michael Flynn. What did FBI agents think when they interviewed Michael Flynn on January 24th, 2017, just 4 days into the administration? You remember they interviewed him about that wiretapped phone call he had had during the transition with the Russian ambassador. And why did the FBI go to the White House? And did really, as we have heard that Comey has said, did the FBI agents believe that Flynn was not lying?
Including Peter Strzok, who was there.
Including Peter Strzok. So what did the FBI agents really say about this? Has Comey actually read the transcript of these conversations?
With Kislyak.
Absolutely. And did Comey believe that Michael Flynn was going to face a false statements charge? Because members of Congress say that Comey told them back then that he did not expect Michael Flynn to be indicted.
So the big sentencing memos are going to come out, looks like on Friday.
Yeah.
Both Manafort and Cohen. Looks like both are coming down.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big news night tomorrow.
Yeah.
What do you expect, if anything, Comey, behind closed doors, will get the transcript on Saturday of what he says. Mm-hmm. What light will he shed on this question we posed at the top? How do Hillary's aides seem to always get away in the end? They get away with this stuff in the end.
Well, he's been questioned about stuff like this before because, as you remember, it was over the July 4th holiday in 2016 that they questioned her, and then almost instantly they exonerated her of making any false
He wasn't
statements.
there during the questioning.
No, but it's as if the FBI didn't even check her testimony. And we later learned that they had been writing this exoneration memo for months before they questioned her and before they questioned a lot of other key figures. And, of course, they handed out immunity like candy. On the other hand, Comey has been asked these questions before, and there were some Republicans who were not happy with Comey being called to be questioned tomorrow.
What struck was the agent that interviewed Mills and Abedin, correct? He also interviewed Michael Flynn.
Yes.
And he's testified on Capitol Hill. So what have they gotten on that from him?
Well, they didn't. He didn't talk about the Flynn case to them because the FBI and everybody associated with has said, well, it's an ongoing criminal investigation. I'm sorry we can't talk about it. Well, Flynn has already pleaded guilty, and Charles Grassley of the Senate Judiciary Committee has been trying to get information on that grounds, on that basis, saying, well, look, he's already pleaded guilty. Well, now, by the 18th of December, just a few days from now, he's going to get sentenced, and it's really all going to be over.
But Byron, wasn't Michael Flynn out of the country when he was wiretapped, or he was surveilled? They listened.
It was the Russian ambassador.
Right.
Who was
so it's not wiretap. They're allowed to do that under U.S. surveillance policies. No problem. But then his name was unmasked. Yeah. You wrote about this as well.
This was something that Devin Nunes got a lot of criticism for bringing up. But the point is, we do wiretap. We never say this, but we wiretap top Russian officials. We knew what was being said. But then you think, well, who's on the other end of that conversation? And that's what was so-called unmasked. And
why does Susan Rice's name come up frequently?
Because she was involved in a lot of the unmaskings, and the question Republicans
at the National
asked
Security Council
and never got an answer to was, why was it so necessary to learn these people's names?
Byron York, we appreciate it. We can't wait. Christmas is early. We're getting all these sentencing memos. Big night tomorrow night. And while the resistance has...
This is not, strictly speaking, a Bob Mueller investigation. This is an example of where he discovers something. His FBI agents learned something about Podesta's brother in the course of interrogating witnesses. They're looking at whether or not the Podesta firm, in conjunction with the Manafort firm, did lobbying for political groups in the Ukraine and did not tell the federal government. This is the first time that the Democrats or any Democrat is arguably within the ambit of something that Bob Mueller does.
Now, while the resistance has been cheering its every move, a referral from the Mueller probe involving former Obama and Clinton aides is now heating up with an increased focus on Clinton-linked Washington insider Tony Podesta and former Obama White House counsel Greg Craig. Here to help us make sense of all of these players, constitutional law professor, Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. Professor, assuming this is true, why shouldn't we be just as critical of this in terms of an overreach by Mueller as we were when the other parties involved?
Well, no, that's a valid point. These violations, in terms of registering as foreign agents, used to occur rather regularly. I mean, it's a rather regular practice in Washington for people to mix these things. If they get caught on them, they would often retroactively apply for these. They generally were not viewed as strong criminal cases, but they went after people like Mueller and others for the failure to register for these types of issues, and now it looks like they're proceeding against people like Podesta. What's interesting about Podesta is
he was offered immunity, wasn't he?
That's right.
Summer use immunity?
Yeah, he wasn't given transactional, but he was offered immunity. He did
more limited.
That's right. Yeah. And so, since then, of course, Manafort did speak with them a great deal, and so there is a possibility that Manafort did drop a dime on people like Podesta.
Well, and I think for Mueller's case, if he's laying out some case against some member of the Trump, circle. If he seems to be a little bit more even-handed in how he kind of throws out the judgment or the facts, it'll be better for the overall credibility of the report, perhaps?
I think it will be, but the problem is, if this is how it ends, it's going to be rather underwhelming. I mean, this is like going around and shooting the wounded. These are not significant crimes. They may be perfectly appropriate to proceed for, certainly to refer, but this is not what we've all been waiting for. Now, maybe he'll prove to be that Agatha Christie prosecutor. In the final scene, we find out all of the characters and things they didn't tell us before. But if not, there's going to be a lot of disappointed folks in this town.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes down to Farah, the foreign agent,
right. No. Or Corsi and Stone, that's going to be rather
yeah. Well, again, where's the collusion?
That's right.
Where's the work between the Trump circle and Russia to throw the election or to get Hillary and to release the email? I don't know. This is a long process, and it doesn't seem like, I mean, is it ending? Do you think it's ending?
I think it is ending, but we have all of these speaking indictments have been filed. None of them suggest that there is any connection, any knowing involvement with Russians by top Trump officials thus far that would sustain this type of collusion conspiracy that people are talking about. Now, maybe he's holding it for the end, but we haven't seen it so far.
Bill Barr's name was out there today as perhaps Trump's pick to be Attorney General. A couple other names are out there, Chris Christie and a few others. What about Bill Barr, former Attorney General himself for a short period of time?
Bill would be just an absolutely brilliant choice. He is a go-by-the-book guy. He is as steady as a rock. I represented him during the Clinton impeachment with a bunch of other former attorney generals. In fact, one time I got a call from him at like 40,000 feet in his plane heading to Europe to tell me he spotted a typo in one of our briefs. I spent years. Yeah, I spent years in therapy over that.
Yeah. So he's a
that's the worst moment.
Details.
Exactly. He's actually one of the best lawyers I've ever encountered, which really puts the pressure on when you represent him. But he would be ideal. And he would get through the Senate very, very easily. He would bring instant credibility. You could not pick a better guy at this moment for that job.
And he's already was once confirmed. I mean, they're citing things that he said about Comey. We'll play just a quick snippet. This is from May of 2017. Let's watch.
He crossed a basic line back in July, a fundamental line in the department, which is that investigations are supervised and directed by the lawyers, the prosecutors at the department, not the agents. And what is of concern, and certainly what appears to have concerned the administration, was not so much that transgression, but his steadfast refusal to acknowledge that he had transgressed those limits on his power.
Not shy about talking about what.
No, but it's hard to imagine anyone who would object with anything he just said. The Democrats have been saying that. The Republicans have been saying that. It's the one point upon which there's universal agreement is that Comey overstepped his bounds. And that was in the Rosenstein memo. Rosenstein quoted Democratic and Republican appointees saying that what he did bordered on the horrific. So the point that you should really get out of that is really the essence of Barr, that he was loved by agents at the Justice
Boy, do they
Department.
need that now.
Yeah, and he's just this rock-solid guy who views these things with clarity. He speaks very directly to them. There's no effort on his part to spin ever. He just talks directly to the issue. Comey was outside the navigational beacons, and he said that.
And he and Comey couldn't be different. I mean, Bill is someone who doesn't want the credit. He doesn't need to get the credit, but steadfast and clear. And I would not want to debate him on any legal issue. I'm glad you were representing him and not I. Jonathan Turley, thanks so much. And when you hear the term deep state, you might think it refers to topics like the ones we just discussed. But what if it extends to government climate reports, too? An analyst digs in next. When the government puts out reports, well, it does give it an aura of kind of credibility, right? Well, that's exactly how the latest national climate assessment was treated when newsrooms, they flew into a frenzy about the looming apocalypse. Watch.
This is criminal, really, when you get down to it. It is tragic that we have a president who, at this critical moment, chooses not to be a firefighter, but to be an arson.
We got kids. We don't want to be, slowly burned to death on our own planet here.
The climate change could kill thousands of Americans and cost the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars. We're just suggesting, Mr. President, if you don't want to believe science, maybe just start with climatekids.nasa.gov. It's a pretty easy read. It's fun. There are pictures.
Oh, that's right, Anderson. You're smarter than everyone else. Anyone scared yet? Well, what if we were to tell you that same government policy paper was funded with the help of progressive climate alarmists like billionaires Tom Steyer and Mike Bloomberg? Well, here now, the man who uncovered the funding, Chuck DeVore of the Texas Public Policy Center. Chuck, tell us a bit about how you were able to find out who funded this and what their climate agenda may be.
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I owe a lot to Nick Loris over at the Heritage Foundation because he did a quick critique that on exactly the point that you showed, the huge hit to the economy and thousands of people dying. That's what the media focused on. Well, that was taken from one study funded, unfortunately, by federal government tax dollars, but also Michael Bloomberg and Tom Steyer. And so he mentioned that. And then I dug into it some more. And what I found out, Laura, was one of the main authors of the report, Professor Rising from Berkeley. This guy's a veritable basket case. On his blog, he talks about, quote, eliminating the president. On his blog, he talked about how he's concerned about the rise of religious extremism in the United States and in the Middle East. I guess equating guys like me with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which is, I don't know, a little kooky if you ask me. He's one of the main authors of the report. And the reason why they're doing this, of course, is that they need to whip people up into fear so that we can hand over our sovereignty, hand over our autonomy to these people who are better than us and smarter than us.
Smarter. I mean, go back to my angle. I did an angle last night on how the left loves to portray itself as the smart set. They know better than the little people. You may like to, fill your truck up with diesel, but guess what? It's all gonna be better under the new way of doing commerce and fueling vehicles. And you just got to listen to us. We'll give the tax incentives to the electric cars and so forth. And you see what's happening in France. People are just rejecting this. And a lot going on in France beyond that, but that's part of this. It costs real money, and people don't want to open up their wallets.
And it hits the middle class the most. The thing that's amazing about France is gas there is about $7.06 a gallon. And almost half of that is taxes, so a lot more than here in America. But what they were rioting over, Laura, was just a 25-cent a gallon increase in the gas tax and about 10 cents a gallon in diesel. Now, the UN climate expert, who wants to, of course, transfer a lot of our wealth to corrupt third world countries, he estimates that in 12 years, we're going to need a carbon tax that's the equivalent of about $49 a gallon for fuel.
That would be fun.
You think there's riots in France now over 25 cents. Imagine what happens with $49 a gallon.
By the way, there's another brainiac whose words we must share with our viewers, Chuck. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's watch.
I wish that I could be the Terminator in real life, to be able to travel back on time and to stop all fossil fuels when they were discovered.
First of all, send me a memo when he's going to drop the Terminator references. I mean, more like Kindergarten Cop. It's the Climate Cop. He should do a whole new sequel to that, Chuck.
Well, just think about what he said. If he could travel back in time and stop all fossil fuels, it's like, are you kidding me? So stop the Industrial Revolution in its tracks around 1700? We'd be living in abject poverty and misery right now if that were to happen, which I guess is kind of like the Terminator movies, right? Wasn't that some sort of a post-apocalyptic dystopia?
Yes. And Chuck, how would he get on that G4 to the next film festival? That's what I want to say.
Exactly.
Chuck, thanks so much. Now, this leads us to our next question. Now, some of the most influential leaders of the Democratic Party have lied to you about science for decades. So why are we still listening to them? Here to debate this is radio host, former Chuck Schumer aide, Chris Hahn. All right, Chris, I know you just got off your Global Express jet. But the Federalist David Harsanyi wrote a great piece today documenting the less than stellar track record of some of the climate alarmists. And I want to start with this one. Back in 1970, Harvard biologist George Wald estimated that, quote, civilization will end within 15 or 30 years unless immediate action was taken. So what happened? He was the soothsayer of the time.
Yeah, look, major events don't happen on a schedule, right? Climate change is real. It is happening. We've seen evidence of it just this year between the major storms, the California wildfires. It is a problem that we should be addressing. 97% of scientists who study this agree that this is a problem that is man-made, caused by our using of fossil fuels, especially coal. And it is time for us to wake up and all speak with one voice. This should not be a political debate whether or not it's real or not. It should be a debate about how we solve the problem. Instead, we still have a president of the United States who says this isn't even a real problem.
Well, do you have a problem,
Laura,
though,
this
Chris?
is a real problem.
Chris, do you have a problem,
it needs a real solution.
I think we have a lot of problems that are resulting in cataclysmic issues happening into our environment. I'm a conservationist, so I want to conserve the beauty that we have, and we have to have business. So that's where I come down. I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be one on TV. But it is interesting, again, going back to judging, in retrospect, we can see who is a pretty good prognosticator and who wasn't such a good prognosticator. So let's try this one. This is back in 1977. This is Barack Obama's future science czar, John Holdren, predicting that global warming could lead to the deaths of about 1 billion starving people by 2020. Now, we have about 13 months left. So what happened? All right, there's another recent prediction, by the way, that I have to get to. Al Gore, he proclaimed in 2006's that Inconvenient Truth film that sea levels would rise 20 feet, quote, in the near future. Was that just when he stepped into the Atlantic? Sorry. But according to government scientists, sea levels only rose about 3 inches between 93 and 2017. Up next, I'm telling you, we lost Chris in the satellite. It's live TV. That's what happens. Chris, we didn't do it on purpose. It was the climate. Lawsuit madness. A new federal complaint accusing the state of Rhode Island for failing to provide students with the skills they need. I'm going to talk to the lead lawyer in the case next.